The Roman molossus. Commonly known as molossus or mastiffs today, and molossus or canis pugnax in the Roman world, the great dog breeds in ancient Rome played a fundamental role in its development and expansion. It is estimated that those ancient breeds are direct ancestors of nowadays Italian breeds such as the Italian Mastiff or Cane Corso, the Neapolitan Mastiff, the Cane de Presa Meridionale and the Maremma Sheepdog, and have had influence in large number of breeds in many of the places that were part of the Roman Empire. In texts from the Roman era they are described as dogs dedicated to the tasks of protection and companionship in the home, as livestock guardian dogs, for hunting, auxiliaries in war, and in gladiatorial shows. The origins of the ancient breeds. The Romans made use of many famous breeds of the ancient world, and it is estimated that from their crossbreeding they came to stabilize specific breeds for each function. The origins of these breeds go back to Mesopotamia, Central Asia, ancient Greece and Anatolia among others. The oldest evidence of the use of large dogs with broad jaws can be found in ancient Mesopotamia. A terracotta tablet found in the ancient Babylonian Empire city of Borsippa and dated to around 2200 BC shows a large dog with its handler. Another terracotta statuette found in the ancient Assyrian city of Nineveh, from around 850 BC, shows a dog with characteristics not so different from a heavy modern mastiff. We can also find evidence in the reliefs in the ancient palaces of Nineveh, from around 635 BC, showing large dogs being used in the hunt of various animals, including the lion. Furthermore, a statuette from the ancient Sumerian city of Lagash shows a dog that is very similar to a modern Cane Corso, and belongs to the 2nd millennium BC. In Egypt it was found evidence of the use of dogs for hunt as well as for war. We can see King Tutankhamun depicted in his chariot hunting ostriches in an engraved golden flabellum found in his tomb. On the other hand, in a painting in a wooden basket he is depicted taking military operations in the Nubian desert, where we can see his dogs attacking Nubian soldiers. Moving eastward, it is said that the Ionian Greeks have also used dogs for battle. The Roman author Aelian, born around 175 AD, in his book Natura Animalia, comments on the use of dogs by the Magnesians of the city of Magnesia on the Meander. He tells us, "Each of the cavalry took as his companion on campaign, a hunting dog and a slave javelin thrower. When battle was due to begin, the dogs, which were fearsome, aggressive and ferocious to encounter, rushed forward and disturbed the enemy formation. Then the slaves jumped out in front of their masters and threw javelins. After the disorder already caused by the dogs, and the activity of the slaves also have had its effect, finally in their place the masters attacked." Also from Asia Minor, there are other records of the use of large combat dogs like the ones used by King Alyattes of Lydia, who reigned approximately from 635 to 585 BC, against an invading army of mounted Cimmerians. The Macedonian author born in the 2nd century BC, Polyaenus, in his book Stratagems of War, narrates the event. "The Cimmerians, a people of great bodily size, made war on Alyattes. He marched against them, and ordered his men to take into battle with them a number of large, fierce dogs. When the dogs were released, they fell on the barbarians as they would on a herd of wild beasts. They injured many of them, so as to disable them from action, and put the others to flight." The profile of the dogs used in Asia Minor, like the ones we saw before, is very likely to coincide in its characteristics with the one represented on the Pergamon altar, not far from Magnesia. Many attribute this as the dog of war of Asia Minor. Much of the authors describe them as having extremely strong and muscular body covered with a thick and shaggy coat, with heavy semi-elongated muzzles, large, solid heads, powerful necks encircled by a great ruff of hair, straight ears, and long bushy tails. These characteristics still can be seen in today's shepherd and guardian dogs of Turkey, such as the Kongal or the Anatolian Shepherd. The classical Greek world was based on societies especially oriented towards agriculture. It is known that the Greeks used powerful dogs to hunt wild boar and deer using bows, spears, and nets. Especially the dangerous task of boar hunting was one of the most valued, as it emulated the great challenges narrated in his old poetry. where his heroes took risks and faced danger to achieve their goals. In mainland Greece, in terms of the use of dogs for warfare, unlike its Ionian neighbors, there are only isolated accounts of its use. One of them recounts the taking of his dog by an Athenian hoplite at the Battle of Marathon, the battle that put to an end to the first attempt by King of Persia Darius I to subjugate Greece. Aelian tells the exceptional story. An Athenian took with him a dog as a fellow soldier to the Battle of Marathon, and both are figured in a painting in the Stoa Poesil. Nor was the dog denied honor, but received the reward of the danger it had undergone in being seen among the companions of Cynaegirus, Epicelus, and Callimachus. Another story comes from the north of Greece, from Macedonian Empire of Alexander the Great. Pliny the Elder details that Alexander's uncle, Alexander I, king of Epirus, gave him a large dog when he was on his Indian expedition. Alexander, to test his character, ordered bears, wild boars, and deers to be let loose before it. But the large dog lazily lay down without reacting too much. This behavior irritated Alexander, who ordered to get rid of it. His uncle, having found out what had happened, sent him another dog, specifying that his powers should be tested, not on small animals, but on the lion or the elephant, adding that he only had originally two, and that if this one was put to death, the race would be extinct. In his book Natural History, Pliny the Elder relates the following. Alexander, without delay, procured a lion, which in his presence was instantly torn to pieces. He then ordered an elephant to be brought, and never was he more delighted with any spectacle. For the dog, bristling up its hair all over the body, began by thundering forth a loud barking. Then attacked the animal, leaping it at first on one side and then on the other, hacking it in the most skillful manner, and then again retreating at the opportune moment. Until at last the elephant, being rendered quite giddy by turning round and round, fell to the earth, and made it quite re-echo with his fall. Also known as the good relationship that Alexander had with his faithful dog Peritus, and his horse Bucephalus, whom he had raised from an early age, and who were known to have accompanied him throughout his long campaign. Plutarch tells us that he lost Peritus and Bucephalus in the hard battle of Hydaspes, where he defeated King Porus in northern India, and then in their memory he founded 2 cities. Later, with the rise of Rome, and their trade with Greek cities, the Near East such as the Phoenicians, and for the clashes with Macedonia and Carthage that culminated with the control or influence of Rome in Greece and the Mediterranean basin, the qualities of the animals used in these territories were more visible to them. Knowing the quality of the Romans to take what they considered useful, and adopt it in their people, it is very likely a greater use of this type of powerful dogs in their territories. Breeds classification in Roman times. In the Roman world, dogs used to be attributed functions very similar to those they have today. On the one hand, we found the dogs in charge of protecting the home, Canis Viliticus. We had the dogs dedicated of protecting the flock, the Canis Pastorales, the dogs for hunting, the Canis Veneticus. We had the dogs dedicated for combat, whether for war or for the amphitheater, the Canis Pugnax. And we also found small dogs specifically to be used as pets, the Canis Meliti. Canis Pastorales. Marcus Terentius Varro is one of the first to deal with the subject of dogs in a practical manner already in 37 BC in his book on agriculture. He placed them as one of the most essential things that a farm must have, saying that no farm is safe without them. He discusses the importance of the sheepdog to defend sheep and goats from predators such as wolves. He highlights the existence of 2 types of dogs, one to hunt in the woods, and the other as a watchdog, the last one with great importance for the shepherd. Then he goes on to make a detailed description of the watchdog. He says that it should have a comely and large face, with black or yellowish eyes and symmetrical nostrils. The upper lip neither too drooping nor too high, the jaw wide, large head, large and drooping ears, thick shoulders and neck. Long joints, the legs straight and rather bowed in and out, wide paws which spread as he walks and the nails hard and curved. With the body tapering at the top of the thigh, the dorsal spine neither protruding nor convex, and the tail thick. with strong bark, large mouth and preferably white in color, in order to be able to distinguish it more easily in the dark from the leonine species. Canis viliticus. About the Canis viliticus or guard dog, the Roman author Columella highlights almost 100 years after Varro, in his book on agriculture, its characteristics. He says, "As guardian of the farm, a dog should be chosen which is of ample bulk, with a loud and sonorous bark in order that it may terrify the malefactor, first because he hears it and then because he sees it. Indeed, without sometimes being even seen, it puts to flight the crafty plotter, merely by the terror which its growling inspires. A squarely built dog is preferred to one which is long or short, and it should have a head so large as to appear to form the largest part of it. It should have ears which drop and hang down, eyes black or gray, sparkling with rays of bright light, a broad and shaggy chest, wide shoulders, thick rough legs and a short tail." He also highlights the importance of the color. He recommends an all-black guard dog for the villa, that would terrify thieves in the daytime and be less visible to trespassers at night. He also remarks that its character should not be too savage, so as not to attack the inhabitants of the house, not so mild that it fawns over the thief. Also highlights that he should be cautious rather than rash because, cautious he says, do not give the alarm unless they have discovered something for certain, whereas the rash are aroused by any vain noise and groundless suspicion. Finally, he concludes that in terms of speed, as it is expected to stay close to the house and granary, a lack of speed is not important. Canis pugnax. Canis pugnax was a term used by the Romans to identify breeds that were used for war, for hunting and for combat purposes such as in the circus or amphitheater. They could be similar to guard dogs, the Canis viliticus, but lighter or more agile since they had to run more. In this category, there are several breeds recognized for their value, their strength, and their size. Among them were the Indian, the Hyrcanian, the Briton, and the Molossan. The terms Hyrcanian, Indian, Iberian, or Albanian were often used to describe the generally ferocious and large dogs of the Middle East and Asia, although it is known that there were specific dogs from those regions. The Kingdom of Iberia and the Caucasian Albania were located in the southern Greater Caucasus, present-day parts of Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Russia. Hyrcania was located in the southeastern region of the Caspian Sea, where Iran and Turkmenistan are today. The famous breeds from those regions were heavy hounds, also known as dogs or gripping dogs, used to hunt close to the quarry and hold it. Since these regions had been part of the Sumerian, the Babylonian and the Assyrian empires, we can estimate that these breeds could be descendants of the breeds previously seen in the palaces of Nineveh and the city of Borsippa. Some of its qualities can be seen in today's Anatolian and Kongol shepherds, the Caucasian Ovcharkas and the Alabay among others. Hyrcania embraced mountainous forests, extensive plains, lakes and rivers, with wildlife ranging from tigers, bear, hyenas, wolves and wild boar to wild horses, asses, buffalo, deer and antelope. These animals were the traditional quarry for hunting mastiffs and holding or gripping dogs. The size, the strength, the speed, and courage of this dog induced Xenophon to recommend it for boar and deer hunting. Aelian also describes how hounds used to accompany the people of Hyrcania to war, and these allies were a great advantage and help to them. He added exaggeratedly, though by today's standards, that Hyrcanians' breeds were popularly considered so large and ferocious that they were sometimes bred with tigers, indicating, however, the kind of reputation the breed had achieved. Gratius narrates that were memorable for never quitting his hold. Also, the impressive and majestic appearance of these animals is suggested by Athenaeus in his work De Hypnosophisti, where he describes a grand procession ordered by Ptolemy II, who governed Egypt from 283 BC to 246 BC. At Alexandria, he remarks that handlers led on 2,400 dogs, some Indian, the others Hyrcanian or Molossan. The molossus. There is no other breed about which more has been written in classical history than the molossan. Aristotle in his book History of Animals, in approximately 347 BC tells us,
The molossan breeds of dogs, those used in hunting are very much the same as those elsewhere, but the sheepdogs of this breed are superior to the others in size, and in the courage with which they face the attacks of wild animals.
The tribal kingdom of the Molossans established in the Epirus region from approx 500 BC, now shared between Greece and Albania, stretched from the north of Mount Pindus to the headwaters of the Thyamis River, on the northwest of the Greek mainland. The Molossans were Greek-speaking, sheep-owning, mainly mountain dwellers who cultivated valleys, occupying the wettest part of Greece, with heavy snowfalls in winter and many villages above 5,000 feet in altitude. The Molossan was particularly noted for its size, and its strong and heavy frame. Distinguished for its beauty or fine appearance as Elian described it. It was also regarded as fierce, impetuous, high-spirited and loyal with an innate love for hard work. It was also swift in pursuit, with a distinct loud and deep-throated bark, although it seldom barked as often as other breeds. The philosopher Lucretius described the breed as, although used on the hunt for its keen scent, the Molossan usually excelled as a sheepdog, herding livestock while guarding against the assaults of wolves and other wild animals. It was highly sought after as a watchdog guarding houses, palaces and women's quarters, successfully combating solitary intruders or gangs of bandits. Never, with them on guard, says Virgil referring to the Molossan and the Spartan breeds, need you fear for your stalls a midnight thief, or onslaught of wolves, or restless Iberians at your back. The molossus took two forms, and it is still reflected in two types of the nowadays molossus of Epirus, the flock guardian type, similar to the Greek shepherd dog, and a more boar-hunting oriented huge hound type, as seen in the Suli Mountains of Epirus, the Suliot dog. Over time, thanks to its famous reputation and later also due to mistranslations of classic works, the molossan became a term to describe large and strong dogs. In this way, the Epirus dogs were united in the same classification with the large broad-mouthed dogs, or mastiffs, or dogs, like the Indians or the Hyrcanians which we talked about before. The Briton breeds. Within the Canis Pugnax category, another of the dogs that we find is the Briton, from the British Islands, also called Pugnaces britanniae. The earliest evidence of this breed is set forth by Strabo regarding the trade from Britain.
These things accordingly are exported from the island, as also hides and slaves and dogs that are by nature suited to the purpose of the chase. The Celti, however, used both these and the native dogs for the purposes of war.
Nemesis for his part tells us,
but is not only Spartan whelps or only molossan which you must rear, sundered Britain sends us a swift sort adapted to hunting tasks in our world.
Also the Roman poet Claudian comments on Briton dogs that can break the necks of great bulls. Many stylized images of hunting dogs pursuing large game on the Castor were hunt cups from Roman Britain from 2nd century, are described by specialists of having broad, full-shaped heads with very short and broad muzzles. Ears small and partially erect, the necks and bodies are massive, and limbs short and stout. The appearance is that of a long-bodied, muscular and heavy mastiff. Gratius recorded in his Synageticon,
What if you visit the straits of the Morini, tide swept by a wayward sea, and choose to penetrate even among the Britons? Oh, how great your reward, how great your gain beyond any outlays. If you are not bent on looks and deceptive graces, this is the one defect of the British whelps, at any rate when serious work has come, when bravery must be shown, and the impetuous war god calls in the utmost hazard, then you could not admire the renowned molossans so much.
Canis veneticus or hunting dogs. In Rome and early Latin societies, and as we saw in Greece, the hunt worked as a communal activity. It would brought with it a social value, which is to bind citizens, friends or allies into a successful mutually cooperative unit. That included men of different social and economic status, and was often associated with the training of young men and the skill they needed for warfare. Future fighters would be prepared for war by the elders through instruction in hunting. The activity was seen as a rite of passage, and a civic framework for competition between adults. Nature was to be feared as much as revered, and there was glory to be won in tempering it. Also it was practiced in two other forms, One is a sport related to social class and financial status, and the other was for necessity, that is being related to land-poor countrymen, hunting for food or to control the predators. The breeds used for hunting were subdivided into 3 categories. There were the CANIS PUGNAX or bellicosi, of which we spoke before, that being large and strong, commonly held the prey until the master arrived or took charge of killing it. Then there would be the sagacious dogs or canis sagaces that will follow the prey mainly by scent, due to their keen sense of smell. And finally we would have those specially adapted to follow the prey by sight, and they would be the fastest of the 3, the canis celeres. In the category of sagacious dogs or scent hounds we would find the Laconian, the Cretan and the Carian among many others. The famous Spartan or Laconian dogs of the olden time were strong, swift, and courageous, and barked on scent of their game. Xenophon described them.
The Laconian should be large, with a small head, straight nose, upright ears, a long and supple neck, and eyes that are black and sparkling. It should either be tan with white markings on the face, chest, legs, and rear, or black with tan marking.
Their strength and courage also recommended them to shepherds and herdsmen as guardians of their flocks. We also know that they were strong, on the authority of Ovid's calling them prevailing Laconians, and swift, from Virgil calling them quick Spartans. Xenophon adds about his chasing style.
A hound that tracked by scent, the Laconian, should give chase vigorously, without relaxing, with much clamor and baying, all coming out together after the hare on every side.
As we saw, the Spartan, the Cretan and the Carian families, appear to have barked on scent of their game, a quality reprobated by many like Gratius. This is why before the game was roused, it was customary with classic sportsmen to employ a specially class of sagaces, known as inductors, mute finders or lemures. That specific type would follow up the trail to the boar's bay in silence, and then it would come back with the rest of the pack. The quarry for this type of dogs was the hare and deer and wild boar. Those animals would abound in the woods and parks of ancient Peloponnese, and the Italian peninsula in ancient times. But for the boar, other types of dogs were also used in order to face the ferocity of such an animal. Xenophon describes,
For hunting the wild boar, provide yourself with Indian, Cretan, Locrian and Laconian hounds. Also boar nets, javelins, spears and caltrops. In the first place, the hounds of each breed must be of high quality, in order to be qualified to fight the beast.
As for the third classification, the canis celeres, we find the Vertrigus. These predecessors of the Irish wolfhound, the Scottish deerhound, the Spanish greyhound as well as the English greyhound hunted by sight and not by scent, and as in our days their streamlined shape allows them to run faster than all the other breeds. The poet Martial from the 1st century AD is the first to speak of the Vertrigus, of whom he says,
Hunts not for himself but for his master, and will bring you the hare unhurt in his teeth.
Gratius contends that great glory exalts the far distant Celtic dogs. Also referring to the yellow-spotted Vertrigus he adds, swifter than thought or a winged bird it runs, pressing hard on the beasts it has found. Arrian in the Synergeticus, written in Greek about AD 150 as a supplement to the manual of Xenophon, after whom he styles himself, suggests that Xenophon must not have known of the Vertrigus, which was named for its swiftness, otherwise, he never would have written that the hound could not catch a hare except by luck. He argues, if the Vertrigus does not run down the hare it must be because of broken ground or a concealing thicket or ditch. A hare startled too close will not even have a chance to run at all. He describes them as splendid animals, the best bred of them, with fine eyes, fine bodies all over, fine coats, and fine appearance. They should be long from head to tail, with a sturdy build, a muzzle that comes to a point, and large soft ears. The eyes should be prominent, large and bright, and should astonish the man who sees them. Chasing the hare by sight rather than by scent, the Vertrigus revolutionized the hunt. The Laconian hounds known to Xenophon were slower and tracked by smell alone, and, if the trail was uncertain, the prey frequently escaped, which is why Xenophon describes other equipment, such as nets and snares. With the Vertrigus, however, the hunter was able to follow the chase on horseback, rather than running behind on foot. So swift was the dog that it also was used in coursing, a sport introduced by the Celts sometime before the 2nd century AD, the purpose of which was not to hunt the hare at all but simply to enjoy the sport of the chase, seeing whose animal was best. For one does not take hounds out in order to catch the beast, says Arrian, but for a race and competition, at least if one is a true sportsman. Use of dogs in the Roman army. One of the first military uses was for dogs to be posted as sentinels. As today, dogs were used to defend forts and also they were put at key points in surrounding areas day and night, thus ensuring that no one would get close. Dogs would bark or growl to alert guards to the presence of a stranger, and they have a light sleep. Also, sometimes, the dogs served as messengers carrying the messages in their collars. The sentinel dogs, probably also dark in color so as not to be seen at night, kept watch over the legionnaires during the construction and dismantling of the temporary fortifications. During the night, if they were released, the dogs would ferociously attack the intruders. Vegetius in his writings on military strategy advises that to prevent the enemy from stealthily taking the walls that be provided with covered spaces which function as protection against the elements, then he adds, sometimes ferocious dogs, with good noses, stay in the towers to sniff out approaching enemies from afar. The dogs were finely trained. They had to be able to live with a whole cohort, and be able to tell friend from foe by scent, clothing, or armor. They also obeyed verbal commands, so as not to attack a stranger if it wasn't necessary. Furthermore, like a soldier, they obeyed orders both to go into battle and to stop or retreat when necessary. Among the tactics, the Romans added collars and armor with sharp blades, to protect the animal's neck, but also with the characteristic of tearing on contact with another combatant. Another of his practices consisted of tying buckets of burning oil on the backs of his war dogs and sending them to the enemy front. These dogs were called pyriferi, as described by Polybius in his book The Histories. These tactics were very efficient against enemy horses which were thrown into chaos. In the Roman Republic, in 231 BC, the Roman consul Marcus Pomponius Matho completed a campaign in Sardinia with the help of war dogs. The Sardinians practiced guerrilla warfare, striking at the Roman legions and then vanishing into caves and woods. The historian Zonaras, born in 1074 AD, tell us,
Many of the inhabitants who, as he learned, had slipped into the caves of the forest, were difficult to locate. Therefore he sent for keen-scented dogs from Italy, and with their aid discovered the trail of both men and cattle, and cut off many such parties.
Tales of the use of dogs from the Celtic peoples from the other side of the English Channel have also been known. Between 114 and 101 BC, large parts of West-Central Europe, including Italy, were faced with a particularly formidable threat from migratory Celtic or Germanic tribes known to history as the Cimbri, Teutons, and Ambrones. They had migrated from the remote European hinterland, with their movements ranging across Gaul and what is now modern-day Austria and southern Germany. In the summer of 101 BC, the consul Gaius Marius confront the Cimbri at Vercellae on the site of modern-day Vercelli, near Milan. Strabo writes the use of fierce dogs in by those tribes, he says, that the war dogs so successfully defended the women and baggage, that the battle had to be recommenced. Pliny the Elder, also in Natural History, describes how at Vercellae, their dogs defended their houses, which were placed on wagons. Between the breeds used in this battle we could estimate that were breeds similar or predecessors of the British Bulldog and Mastiff, Dutch Mastiff, Great Dane, German Boarhound and Norwegian Elkhound. Roman circus and amphitheater. During the Roman Empire in ancient Campania, the territory that today includes the city of Capua and its surroundings, was like a factory of products, animals and war and sand men as a result of commercial activities and conquests of foreign territories. There were also the main schools where people from all over the known world trained to become gladiators. The Romans took everything into account and did not miss the opportunity to improve the fighting skills of their dogs as well by creating the first breeding and training centers, and in this way making it a prosperous business. Therefore this dogs of war and fight from Capua were sold throughout the empire. It was the most important dog training center in the world. Dogs of all breeds converged there, which were not only trained but also crossed with each other to improve performance. They also studied the most suitable food for them, and the armor to protect them or harm their adversaries. The Dominios factionum, who were breeders and entrepreneurs, who selected and groomed them to support them in fairs and increasingly popular public shows, the Ludi gladiators, received very generous fees. Therefore, large specimens were obtained, also to support the weight of the armor, selected based on their aggressiveness and insensitivity to wounds. The Canis pugnax was powerful, combative, brave but also agile, fast and capable of covering considerable distances on a daily basis, both on the plains and in the mountains and withstanding all kinds of climates. Its weight had to be heavy enough to block and not be picked up by the opponent or the beast, and agile and strong enough to put the victim on the ground after having secured a good grip. Their ears and tails were cropped to offer little grip to the opponent, and their necks had a very abundant layer of fat and little adhered to the muscle, so that the bites of beasts or wild boars slipped on the epidermis without reaching the vital organs. They had a solid and robust body with a fairly long nasal bridge, large and fairly flat skull, and hard and developed teeth implanted deep in the bone, characteristics that allowed them a strong grip and good breathing during movement, and the necessary muscular strength for tough tasks. These breeds were also used in Roman shows in the circus or in the amphitheater. Called venations, these had the participation of exotic and wild animals. They were generally celebrated at public games, known by the name of ludi, held for the entertainment of the Roman people in conjunction with, or sometimes as the major feature of the Roman religious festivals, and were also presented as part of the cult of state. The venations were performed before the gladiatorial fights were only fight humans. On the other hand, these shows could be shown in various ways. They could be exhibitions of exotic animals which were some cases trained. There were the duels to the death of beasts and also the condemnation of people thrown to die by beasts. And also there were simulated animal hunts where often involved two types of humans. One was the bestiarius, who used knife or spear, and there were the venators or hunters, who used to come from Africa and practiced in the arena the hunting arts of their country of origin. Danilo Mancioli, in his book Life and Customs of the Ancient Romans, tells us, then there were the fights between men and animals, during which, in general, it was the latter that succumbed, the venators or bestiaries, who were trained in schools similar to those of the gladiators, but unlike the latter they were not highly appreciated by the spectators. They wore short tunics with sleeves, they wore bands on their legs, they had as weapon a broad-pointed spear and leather whip, and were often accompanied by a pack of dogs. Thousands of wild animals were captured for the arenas, and were often confronted by groups of molossus led by the venators. In addition to the molossus, lions, elephants, bears and tigers among others were shown. The brought of animals from the far-flung corners of the empire were an ostentatious display of wealth and power by the emperor or other patron who held the games, and also meant to demonstrate Roman power of the whole human and animal world. Strabo writes that 4 molossans were needed to face a lion. The Emperor Caligula, in the 1st century AD, organized a fierce fight between up to 400 bears and a handful of venators flanked by their fighting dogs. Marital, in De Spectaculis, a series of poems commemorating the opening of the Colosseum by Titus in 80 AD, describes the sight of a deer in the amphitheater being chased by molossans. Stopping in front of the emperor's podium, it was left untouched by the hounds. Modern descendant, the cane corso. A direct descendant of the Roman Canis pugnax is the nowadays Italian Mastiff or cane corso. The cane corso, the Neapolitan Mastiff and the cane de Presa meridionale share the same common trunk. But it was the corso and the cane de Presa that kept their main characteristics, because it was kept as a working dog. After the fall of Rome, luckily, skills honed during empire building translated well to peacetime, and the mighty dogs remained forming part of the landscape as the indomitable olive trees that dot the Italian landscape. The uses given in the times that followed ranged from guarding homes and livestock, for hunting wild boar, flushing badger and porcupine, or for hauling heavy carts among other things. For these reasons, it remained agile, robust and light at the same time, able to reach the prey and cover wide spaces and stretches of roads. But due to the modernization of agriculture and breeding systems, in particular the disappearance of breeding in the wild and semi-wild state, also the disappearance of wild game and the use of firearms with the consequent different hunting techniques, the uses of the cane corso were reduced almost to its extinction. Luckily in the 1970s a group of enthusiasts led by biologist Paolo Brever took the few remaining animals in the traditional rural communities of southern Italy, particularly in Puglia, and began a breeding process to save it. It's a catch dog, a Mastiff type or a Dogue type in Italian. It has a medium-large size, sturdy and muscular with a strong skeleton and muscles and athletic with a solid appearance, compact, stiff coat, with a big head. The length of the head reaches 36% of the height at the withers, and a body longer than tall. Males surpass the 27.5 inches, which is equivalent to 69.8 centimeters at the shoulder, and often weighing more than 100 pounds. His temperament is very stable, he reacts only when necessary. It is normally a calm dog, barking only when alerted to a strange situation. As protector of his property and family is unequaled, however, he is able to tell friend from foe. It is very intelligent and he is easily trained, being an excellent interpreter of human gestures. He is docile and affectionate to his owner, loving with children and family.